Hi everybody, my name is Brady and I'm a 19th century American historian and we are back with another React video. And today we're going to be doing more Oversimplified. I'm very excited about this one because we're doing Prohibition. As a subject, that seems so interesting among his other videos. He does a lot of war stuff, he did some biographic stuff. This one seems a little bit different, like he's taking on a whole movement, which sounds like a lot of fun. I don't know a whole lot about Prohibition. I do the 19th century, not the 1900s, though there's definitely going to be some crossover with the temperance movement, which is going to pretty much push into the 20th century, and of course we're going to get Prohibition kind of as a result. But this is not my best subject. But the temperance movement is a sign of the times. There's a lot of groups that pop up during the 19th century that really push to punish moral crimes. Things like drinking, which was very normal at the time. The amount that people drank at the time was absolutely ridiculous compared to now. They didn't even think about it the same way that we do. So this is going to be a long one, and as all of you know who have been watching me, but some of you may not know who have not been watching me, I like to pause a lot, give my mental process as we go, so this is going to have a lot of pausing, a lot of breaking up the video and whatever. And if you're not ready for that, then I'm sure there's a million other React videos that have already popped up by the time you're seeing this, and you'll be able to get something a little bit more concise, but this is what we do over here, so let's get it started, because this is going to take forever.
This video was made possible by Honey. Click the link below to save money on your online shopping. And also, limited edition Al Capone pins on sale now. Get them quick before they sell out. Link in the description down below. Good morning, honey. What's for breakfast? The usual. 2 caskets of rum, a mug of hard cider, and a full bottle of wine. Oh boy. Oh, I'm running late. I'll have to take it with me. Don't forget your lunch. It's a 6-pack of beer, a flask of whiskey, 6 shots of tequila, and as a special treat, a banana. Aw, gee whiz. I'm gonna be smashed today. Enjoy your day of operating sharp, dangerous farm equipment. I can't believe this is an acceptable way to live.
This is amazing. I love this so much, because this is something that I always thought about. I read about stuff, especially in the 19th century, where we have these prim and proper guys who don't seem like they overindulge, but I find that a lot of them had some things that we would consider a drinking problem. Like, it's weird because they didn't think of it that way. The amount that they drank compared to today was just so much more that what they had just seemed normal for the time. I don't know if there's like numbers for it, but I think of even people like John Adams early on in American history. His family had a history of alcoholism. It was a big problem. He wasn't a huge fan of it, but he would still have like his daily thing. I don't know how much he drank of hard cider. He didn't stay away from it completely. It was just such a normal part of life.
God bless America. Okay, gotta go. I love my life!
Dude. Oh, that looks amazing. That looks absolutely amazing. Did the last... I don't know what his last video even was. It was the Russia one. Did the last one look like this? Because visually, this looks different. And I'm liking it.
America, the land of beautiful strip malls, top-class infrastructure, and wonderful urban sprawl. Ah, yes.
It's
Beautiful
funny because
America.
it's not
But
true.
what's the most American thing you can think of? The Statue of Liberty? Mount Rushmore? A crazy lady in a mobility scooter yelling at a pigeon?
Dude.
What if I told you the answer is alcohol? That's right. When the Puritans arrived on America's shores, they brought a ship packed with beer. George Washington provided his men with a daily cup of whiskey. Andrew Jackson's inauguration party left the White House so trashed that everybody had to be ordered outside.
Hold on.
Andrew Jackson.
He has a model for Andrew Jackson. I don't know if he's shown up in previous ones, but the fact that he has a model for Andrew Jackson makes me so happy, because that's the one I want. I know he's done some biographic ones where he's like, he did Hitler, he did Henry VIII. Andrew Jackson is the one that I've wanted since forever. if he is going to do another biographic one, I really want it to be Andrew Jackson. So the fact that he has a model already made of Andrew Jackson, don't play with my heart, man. You got to make it happen. I really want to see this. He's perfect. He is so perfect for this kind of video, and I really hope he does it. Also, that story is amazing. He just invites everybody into the White House, and they trash the place, and there's like tobacco spit all over the place, and it's not like that it wasn't all over the place beforehand, but it gets way worse once Andrew Jackson steps in office.
The inauguration party left the White House so trashed that everybody had to be ordered outside. Frederick Douglass said whiskey made him feel like a president. Me too, Frederick. Me too. Americans drink at breakfast.
So is that
Doctors
him?
prescribed their patients hard liquor. In the 19th century,
It's
Americans
not
drank
him.
3 times as much as their modern-day counterparts. That's a lot of whiskey. Hey, Jerry,
Oh.
how's that report coming along? Already done, sir. I've also organized your paperwork, watered your flowers, and been a father figure to your children. Wait a minute. What's that smell? Have you been drinking at work? No, sir, I would never. Well, why not? Everyone else is doing it, but I got all my work done. You're fired!
And you wouldn't see a lot of people like that. Like, every once in a while, you would. There are some people who just flat out stay away from the stuff. But to go to the early example of John Adams, he was pretty against it, but he still dabbled in it. He had his fair share. So, to have somebody who completely abstained from it, they are certainly an outlier.
Americans drink at work. They drink at barn raisings, baptisms, and public hangings. Heavy drinking is so normal that it was as American as apple pie.
Dude.
Hi, everyone. My name's Ron, and I'm an alcoholic. Get over yourself, Ron. We're all alcoholics. But more and more Americans began to wonder whether all of this truly was a normal way to live. Were Americans drinking, perhaps, a little too much? Well, one group in particular thought the answer to that was yes. You know them, you love them.
Woman. That's funny because it is very true. I mean, women have to deal with this, with their husbands getting smashed all the time. They're going to be a huge. It's weird. They're going to be a huge part of the temperance movement as it starts to pick up, and it's weird. Because you don't expect women to be so heavily involved in this sort of protest stuff, but there's going to be some interesting protests that break out. I'm sure he's going to cover it. This is so far very exciting. I like the way he's gone about this. He's pacing it very well.
Oh crap! Woman, run! Hang on. We just want to talk. Women talking in public? That's outrageous. Come on, Fred. You've got 2 kids and a wife at home. Yet here you are spending your entire paycheck on booze. And you, Dr. Spanky, you were on the cusp of discovering time travel. But what did you discover instead? The sweet, sweet joys of whiskey. That's right. Alcohol. It's destroying our families, our jobs, and our homes. Right. Hang on, men. Don't let them get to you. This saloon is our safe space where our wives and children can't annoy us with reality, where we're free to be real men. Right? Right. And what does it real men do? Take care of their families.
There we go. And when I say that these groups popped up and they really wanted to crack down on moral crimes, it's not like they don't have any sort of legitimate grievance here. The women especially did. There's something there. A lot of the cracking down on moral crimes was BS, and today we'd be like, why are you even bothering? They're not hurting anybody else or whatever. And we don't know how well Prohibition is going to end up working out at this stage in history. Now we know that it doesn't really work because then you're just fueling a black market, which is going to be loads of trouble. And I know they're getting into that because Al Capone is in the thumbnail.
I don't know what she's talking about. You take care of your family? No.
I love this
We
rabble.
drink beer,
Just listen
we
close.
shoot guns, and we mud wrestle. As America's
Hey.
heavy drinking ruined more and more lives, moral resistance began to arise, and women were at the forefront, taking matters into their own hands at a time when women doing just about anything was shocking. They'd had enough of being victim to their husband's heavy drinking, and they were going to do something unprecedented. You're going to what? I'm going to protest. Oh, sweetie. Women can't protest.
He keeps saying woman. Is that a thing? Is this like an accent thing or a regional thing? Are there people who just say woman can't? Or is this like part of the joke? I'm honestly at the point where I can't tell. Women politically, some were a little bit active before this, but not in a widespread sense. We have a lot of women who latched on to the abolitionist movement. And when we do have people who really want to fight for more rights, it was only natural. Now the slaves are freed, right? What year is this? Yeah, the slaves are definitely freed at this point. We're in like the 70s, the 1870s at least. So we are now. Women are still left with really nothing to show for it. So it's not like they weren't politically active, but this is really them starting to break out on their own a little bit more than they previously had. I mean, there's always some outliers there, but this is going to really snowball a little bit.
Starting in Ohio, before spreading nationwide, women began a crusade against alcohol. They marched through towns and cities, singing hymns, gathering outside saloons, and praying on their knees. Women praying was so terrifying that in some towns, schools were shut and business stagnated. On one occasion, firemen were called out to hose down the dangerous praying women. On another, the owner of a beer garden reportedly held a cannon outside and threatened to reduce the savage women to dust.
You can really find the parallels to the civil rights movement later on. It's not even subtle here. Like the fire hose thing is like you don't even think about the suffrage, not suffrage movement. I mean, I guess you could think about the suffrage movement, but you don't even think about like the temperance movement. You don't even think about prohibition. The first thought for most Americans is the civil rights movement, where it's used on African Americans.
Nevertheless, they persisted. They formed the WCTU in 1874, and they organized. They set up homes for inebriate women. They installed water fountains in public parks. They wrote textbooks for school children that contained some interesting claims about drinking alcohol. Here's little Timmy. Uh-oh. Looks like Timmy's gonna have his first drink. He's taking a small sip of whiskey, and Timmy has spontaneously combusted.
Oh, great.
The woman's efforts weren't in vain. In small towns across America, drugstores agreed to stop fulfilling prescriptions for alcohol. Men committed themselves to giving up drink. Inspired by the woman's moral fervor, some saloon owners closed their doors. The Women's Crusade and other temperance movements were forcing people to reconsider alcohol's role in society, and more people began to side with the growing temperance movement. Many states had even begun enacting their own dry laws that restricted the sale and use of alcohol. One of them was Kansas, where alcohol had been outlawed since 1881. Despite this, many illegal saloons remained open, and authorities had done just about nothing to stop them. One woman, disgusted by what she saw, decided she would take the law into her own hands.
So this isn't quite prohibition yet. We're going to get to a constitutional amendment, which is totally, like, crazy to me at this point. It's so hard these days to get a constitutional amendment. The fact that this movement grew to the point that where they were able to get one on alcohol, that's actually completely insane to me.
And not just any woman, a terrifying, hatchet-wielding, sweet old lady named Carrie Nation. Armed with her trusty hatchet and a bag of what she called smashers, she traveled from town to town visiting saloons. But she wasn't there to get smashed. She was there to smash.
Oh.
The men could do nothing but cower as sweet little Carrie hulked out and tore the place to shreds.
Jeez.
She went to Kiowa and smashy smashed. Wichita, smashy smash. Topeka, smashy smash. On a couple of occasions, she was arrested.
I was about to say.
They were like, okay, Carrie, we're gonna let you go so long as you promise to be a good girl and not smash up any more saloons. Okay? Screw you, pig! Yeah, I think she's gonna be all right.
I mean, I don't agree with her message, but she's kind of a legend. That's kind of amazing. Like, I appreciate some a good protester. I'm usually not one for destroying private property or whatever, but I kind of respect her passion. You know, it's just one of those things.
Smash, smash, smash. Carrie's tactics shocked the other members of the Women's Christian Temperance Union, but she assured them, and this is a quote, "Ladies, you do not know how much joy you will have until you smash, smash, smash." Carrie became a household name, and she hoped her unusual tactics would spread across the country. But unfortunately, many of the women's movements eventually slowed down. Why? Well, because of this kind of thing. Thelma, I ripped my pants again. Ugh, well, you'll have to sew them yourself because I'm going out protesting. What? I don't know how to sew. What if I burn the house down and get eaten by alligators? What? How? Don't be stupid, Mitch. Look, I've gotta go. Call me stupid? She's the one.
And he's totally gonna get. Oh, jeez. And then there we go.
Hey, Thelma! Look who's stupid now! See, well, the woman.
Oh my god. This is not at all. There's something there. There's definitely something there. It reminds me of like old soldiers in war before this that just refused to wash their own clothing because that was women's work. And they're just walking around stinking up the place, getting sick or whatever, and just not maintaining decent hygiene just because of like pride and not wanting to do what was considered women's work. So there's nothing surprising about that.
We were out protesting. There was nobody to do the cooking and cleaning and being seen and not heard, and they gradually had to return to their duties at home. But where the woman had got the ball rolling, a new movement was about to take that ball all the way to Washington, D.C.
Here we
I'm talking
go.
about the Anti-Saloon League. The Anti-Saloon League was a political pressure group run by a very sweet-looking old man. But don't let that deceive you. This guy was an evil genius. While the women's movements were interested in a whole range of issues, Wayne Wheeler and the Anti-Saloon League only cared about enemy number one, Mr. Alcohol. And as a result, they were extremely effective. They were able to exploit the fears of the American people. And I mean everyone's fears. Here's how they did it. Hello, sir. Welcome to the Liberal Progressive Rally. Why don't you introduce yourself? Well, I'm Patty, and I'm an immigrant from Ireland. And tell me, Patty, do you drink? Oh, yes. I drink a lot. See, folks, people like Patty come here looking for a better life, only to end up drunk in the gutter. Don't worry, sir. We're gonna help you. Hey, man, you're doing great. I just need you for one more thing. Hey, Christian conservatives. This is Patty. He's a dirty Catholic Irish immigrant who's come to destroy America with his alcohol-fueled debauchery.
It's funny because that guy is two things that we don't really think about all that much as like against like the American image at the time. But yeah, I because Irish people were white. We don't think they're part of like this oppressed minority, but they were. There's a huge problem with people who come from Catholic countries because America was not fond of Catholics. We are a Protestant nation above all in the religious sense. We didn't even have a Catholic president until JFK. That's kind of crazy when you think of it today, because it seems like politically they all kind of get lumped together. Every single Christian denomination, they're all kind of under one little umbrella there. We don't really think of one party as being the Catholic Party and one being the Protestant Party. We don't do that anymore.
Workers were told alcohol was a
Hey, it's the Monopoly guy.
them subjugated.
I missed that guy.
Were told alcohol was making their
Hey, it's the Monopoly guy. I missed that guy.
The black community was warned alcohol was hindering its progress, while racists were warned alcohol would turn black men into brutes.
Oh, that's
the most confusing eras of it.
That's awful, but very true. How that sort of fear mongering is very, very common. And I guess it's kind of smart because it is going to appeal to those people, because black people have not been free for very long in the grand scheme of things, and they're still afraid that we cannot coexist in that sense. So yeah, that's gonna hit. That's gonna hit very well with that audience.
American politics, totally opposing groups found themselves agreeing on at least one thing. Alcohol was bad. The Anti-Saloon League also made great use of propaganda, something prohibitionists have been doing for decades. Take this specimen, for example, that warns what will happen to you if you start drinking. Let's see. First you take a drink, you get a little rowdy. Okay. You make some new friends. Nice. Then you become homeless. You turn to crime. And, but the most effective tactic.
It reminds me of those old anti-weed commercials that were totally disingenuous, because they were clearly made by people who'd never smoked weed before in their lives. It's like I remember I don't remember if it was I don't think it was like a Reefer Madness thing. I know there was this one where this guy's like, I'm so high, nothing can hurt me, and then he shoots himself in the mouth with a shotgun. And if you've ever smoked the stuff, I'm pretty sure you know that that's BS, and that's not the type of behavior that you would have on marijuana. You're clearly on something else.
Tactic Wheeler used to force prohibition on America was pressure politics. In any election he could, Wheeler very successfully rounded up support against any politician who was in favor of alcohol. In Ohio alone, he had 70 state representatives and the popular Republican governor ousted from office and replaced with prohibitionists. Suddenly, every politician in America was afraid of Wayne Wheeler. Even those who enjoyed alcohol in private began pretending to be against it in public. Alcohol is delicious. Malicious.
This is something that I don't respect what the guy's going for, but I like his tactics. I think rallying the people against politicians is a very good thing. It's one way to actually hold them accountable. They'll go off and do whatever the hell they want, regardless of whether it's what people voted for them for. So I kind of respect his approach, but not his end game. Sense. I love using the will of the people against politicians. It always makes me happy when I see stuff like that. We don't get a lot of it over here, but I've seen it here and there.
Sorry, Wayne. I'm really drunk right now. Then it really hit the fan in 1917, when America found itself fighting in the First World War against Germany. Anti-German sentiment exploded. Sauerkraut became Liberty cabbage. German measles became Liberty measles. And Dachshunds became the embodiment of evil. See, America? You've always been this way. The biggest brewers in America were German, and Wheeler saw to it that drinking alcohol became akin to pro-German treason. The German brewers desperately tried to fight back, creating their own propaganda, presenting beer as a healthy beverage, one that you could even give to your kids. As you can imagine, it didn't go down
That's
well.
not a great
President
idea.
Wilson instituted some temporary wartime prohibition measures to save grain for food, and with many in the country now in support of prohibition, all that was left was to make it law. One problem was that taxes on alcohol made up nearly 40% of the U.S. government's annual revenue, and the government wasn't just about to give that up. No problem. The Anti-Saloon League helped lobby for the creation of a new income tax on the American people. And just like that, the government was no longer reliant on alcohol. Prohibition was finally introduced to Congress in 1913.
That is a very interesting conversation to have, especially as more and more states start to legalize marijuana. And it's the best comparison that we have now. It's something that's been prohibited. But now it's starting to become more legal, and we have a lot of states who are starting to see the benefits of the tax dollars here. So to lose that would be huge. This guy's smart, though. This guy is definitely very smart. I don't respect him, but I think he's a great antagonist in this story. I in the sense that you like a good villain. In that sense, I kind of like him.
Not just as a law, but a constitutional amendment.
Jeez.
In 1917, as the House held their final vote on the Prohibition Amendment, Wheeler was watching from the gallery. You spineless cowards. I know half of you drink, yet here you are bowing down to Ned Flanders up there. Look at him, like he's some kind of Caesar. Ugh, don't be so dramatic. I obviously don't think I'm Caesar. Now release the lion. In the end, Prohibition passed the House easily, 282 votes to 128, and the states ratified the new amendment by 1919. America, a nation obsessed with liberty and freedom, had just voluntarily given up its private right to choose whether or not to drink alcohol. We did it, folks. We fixed everything. America will be perfect forever. But you just dissolved America's 5th largest industry and lost tens of thousands of jobs for us immigrants. No, you idiot. You don't get it. We helped you. Idiot? Ugh, I could really go for a beer. Oh, no. Shortly after Prohibition went into effect, alcohol consumption in America decreased as Americans followed the law and tried not drinking. Man, if we're going to be law-abiding good boys, we need something else to fill the dark, lonely void that delicious beer once did. Well, how about we crack open a nice cold can of water? Hell yeah.
I'm very curious. Like, I know that at this point it's going to have a downturn because there isn't a system in order to get it illegally yet, but that's going to be established here, and I'm very curious to once we get into that stuff. I imagine that's going to be closer to the second half.
Toss it over. Nah, this isn't doing it for me. Let's try knitting. This isn't filling the dark void at all. Want to play some kites? Ah, screw it. Let's go get some illegal beer. Well, it seemed like many Americans supported Prohibition. After the law went into effect, it seemed like just as many Americans intended to keep on drinking, and they would go on to find a variety of ways to break the new law. Here's a question for you. Do you like breaking the law? Well, shame on you. Or do you like saving money when you shop online? Then you should use Honey.
Okay, as I usually do, I'm going to play through the ad. Some people like to skip over the ads. This ad is brand new, so I know that the promo code is still active. So we are going to watch the ad. You can skip it on my video if you want, but you should feel bad about it if you do. Okay, now we're clear on that. Let's continue.
Do you ever shop in store? Of course not. Then you'd have to talk to real-life people. Yuck. You'd rather shop online in the comfort and darkness of your mom's basement. And better yet, you can save money when you shop online with Honey. Honey is a free browser extension that scours the internet for promo codes and automatically tests them when you're checking out. Look at me. I'm buying a Baby Yoda smartwatch to increase my chances of getting a girlfriend. And look, this magic dancing coin man has a promo code for me. Holy heckin' balls. I just saved $18.75. Watch out, ladies. And guess what? Those of you who've already installed Honey using my link have found over $247,000 in savings. So what are the rest of you waiting for, you big dumb stinky idiots? It's free and can be easily peasily installed in 2 clicks. So get Honey for free today by going to joinhoney.com/oversimplified. That's joinhoney.com/oversimplified. And as always, you'll be supporting my channel.
What if I don't like saving
Now,
money?
where were we? Oh yeah, punching Patty, passing Prohibition, and procuring pints. Pretty soon after the new law went into effect, the failures of Prohibition were already beginning to rear their ugly heads. For starters, the details of the new Prohibition law, written by none other than Wayne Wheeler himself, turned out to be more draconian than expected. Many Prohibition supporters only wanted to outlaw hard liquor and hoped beer would remain legal, but the Volstead Act outlawed anything over 0.5%. That would make Liberty Cabbage illegal. Secondly, the new law was full of loopholes that Americans very quickly began to exploit. For example, while the sale and manufacture of liquor was illegal, drinking it wasn't. And you could also keep any alcohol you had before the law went into effect. So many private clubs hoarded huge amounts of alcohol that saw them through the entire Prohibition period. Whiskey intended for medicinal purposes was also allowed, and doctors basically became bartenders. It looked as though a full-on epidemic had broken out, as there...
This is just like weed. I didn't realize how similar it would be because we have like medical marijuana as well. Like this is the same thing. And you just got to go there and be like, "Oh, my back hurts. I need to drink. It'll make me feel a whole lot better, doc." And the doctors are in on it. They know this whole thing is BS.
There was a sudden surge in prescriptions for whiskey. Sacramental wines used by churches and synagogues were also permitted. Orders for communion wine suspiciously skyrocketed by millions of gallons. And as rabbis had access to religious wine, suddenly everyone was becoming a rabbi. You had
really?
Rabbi Pat O'Leary, Rabbi LL Cool J, Rabbi Fluffy. But don't worry, I'm sure all these definitely legitimate religious figures couldn't possibly be selling wine in the back alley after Mass. Yep, definitely nothing strange going on here. New products also hit the shelves in stores, such as Vine Glow, a brick of dehydrated grape juice, itself not alcoholic, and therefore perfectly legal. But the packaging did contain a strangely specific warning. After dissolving the brick in a gallon of water, do not place the liquid in a jug in the cupboard for 20 days, because then it would turn into wine. I'll take $1,000. Yes, sir. Now, at this point, I want you to think back for me.
There are people who like brew their own beer these days. I wonder how much of that stuff was actually part of this, or if this is just being funneled through if this is mostly being funneled through legal means into illegal means. I'm sure there is plenty of brewing that will end up going on at some point once people really start to get organized for this, but I wonder what percentage of it is funneled through loopholes.
If you will, To the year 2005. You're the coolest kid around, and you convince your parents to rent the greatest movie of all time from your local blockbuster. But the movie starts with a strange message, something about not downloading a car. You immediately disregard that and hop on Kazaa to download the greatest song of all time, and in the process, drain your dad's bank account with copious amounts of ransomware. You were breaking the law, you bad boy or girl, but did anyone come to arrest you? No. That's my point. If no one's enforcing a law, while everyone's breaking it, is it really a law? And so it was with Prohibition.
Not really.
See, the conservative-led governments of the decade were also the kind of people who believed in small government spending. So they passed a law that would be extremely difficult to enforce, but also didn't want to spend any of the money required to enforce it. The newly created Bureau of Prohibition only had 1,500 agents to cover the entire country. That's one agent for every 70,666 Americans in a massive country with 12,000 miles of coastline and one gigantic land border with Canada. Good luck, schmuckos. And all these clever little loopholes people were using to score illegal booze were only just the beginning. America was about to devolve into alcohol-fueled criminal chaos.
This is what I wanted.
Prohibition had made alcohol a precious commodity, and millions of Americans would become outlaws as they found a variety of ways to score illegal booze. For example, many Americans began making their own liquor.
Here we
Illegal
go.
stills from making moonshine were found by Prohibition agents from the hills of Kentucky and the caves of Arizona to parking lots in major cities, and even in the homes of Prohibition-supporting politicians. Oh, come on now, fellas. I voted for Prohibition. I'm not gonna have an illegal still. What's this? That's my son, Freddie. Say hi, Freddie. Sir, this is obviously an illegal still. How dare you? Hey, what's this in the bathtub? That's bath water. Why does it taste like alcohol? Here's a better question. Why are you tasting my bath water? Weirdo. Come on, Freddie. Let's get away from these perverts. To discourage moonshining, the government began adding extra toxins to many of the products moonshiners were using, which resulted in many cases of severe illness and death. But alcohol wasn't just being made at home.
And there's people who will illegally sell like weed. We're going back to weed, but it'll also have like other stuff in it, and it'll be like a little bit funny, and people will end up actually getting hurt from it. And that will happen with all sorts of black market drugs, because the fact is, once you've made it illegal, you've given up your ability to regulate the nitty-gritty details of it. You've just flat out prohibited it. If you have kind of a legal avenue for people to get it, you can at least assure that what they're consuming is made with legitimate materials, I guess. And people aren't going to put funny stuff in it. That's also going to be a problem.
America's vast coastlines, rum runners smuggled alcohol into the country by sea. A floating supermarket known as Rum Row extended along the East Coast just beyond America's maritime limit, and bootleggers frequently sailed out in small boats to pick up shipments of booze. These bootleggers could then be found selling their illegal products everywhere, even in the holes of Congress. Wow, Pop. One day, I want to work here. Well, son, if you work hard and never give up, one day even you could be a massive hypocrite. Even President Harding was known to serve his cabinet bootlegged whiskey, and some bootleggers were so successful, they became bazillionaires, such as Roy Olmsted, an ex-cop who became one of the biggest employers in the Seattle area from smuggling booze. Unfortunately, all of his whiskey came from Canada. Yuck. All of this criminality...
Is Canada known for having bad whiskey? Is that a thing? I don't drink. That is one of the things about this whole thing. Like, I've never drank in my life. I don't do any, like, recreational substance. So a lot of this I can only, like, relate ideas to, like, abstractly. I've not really actually tried any of this stuff. I don't think I need to, but that is something, I guess, I don't know what's good and what isn't. So in that case, I don't know if he's joking or if that's actually something they have a bad reputation for.
Was being made possible by copious amounts of corruption. Across the country, armies of government officials were persuaded to turn a blind eye. Bootleggers became so rich, it was no problem to stuff a couple $1,000s into the front pocket of the police chief, or the mayor, or their disapproving mother. And some cops were getting almost as rich as the bootleggers. All right, men, everyone gather in. I've received word that one of you has been taking bribes from bootleggers. Any ideas who? Kevin, perhaps. Got any thoughts? No, sir. Many police officers came from the same communities that drink a lot, and they weren't about to arrest their own granddads for knocking back some homemade gin. But all this isn't to say there was no enforcement. Plenty of government officials were doing their best to enforce the new laws, and some unlucky individuals received very harsh penalties, such as a Michigan mother who was sentenced to life in prison for small-scale moonshining. Cases like these were widely reported in the media and only served to make Prohibition even more unpopular.
I don't want to keep saying this, but we do have people who are serving ridiculous sentences for non-violent drug offenses today, and that only makes people want to legalize drugs more. It's only natural here. And it's weird how little people in government really make that connection between prohibition of alcohol and prohibition of other substances. It doesn't seem like, it seems like they willfully ignore that. And I know that's sort of like a duh, of course they're willfully ignoring that, but I guess it should be said out loud.
But not just that. The media also love to cover the exploits of the most famous bootleggers, turning them into national icons. One of the biggest bootleggers was a man named George Remus. Originally a lawyer, he watched as his bootlegger clients paid off enormous fines like it was nothing, and proclaimed bootlegging's the business for me. But unlike most bootleggers, Remus had big brain, and he came up with a pretty clever system. See, there were millions of gallons of liquor produced before Prohibition that were sitting in distillery warehouses, and it could only be sold with government permission to drug companies. So Remus set up his own drug company and bottled the liquor.
Oh,
and
what a
his own transport
genius.
company to transport the liquor. And then he would send his own men out with guns to intercept his own transport vehicles. And this would happen. Hey man, this is a stick-up. Oh no, please don't hurt me. I won't hesitate to shoot. Please, I have a wife and kids. Hand over all the whiskey, Fatty. Hey, Fatty isn't in the script, you jerk. After stealing...
This guy is so... Like, this is the thing about studying history. You know that a lot of these people aren't good people. But if you don't find some enjoyment in some awful things, history is not going to be a good time for you. It's why I look at people like Andrew Jackson, I'm like, he's a lot of fun. I like him. Even though he's like an awful human being, I will look at some, kind of like the ridiculous, over-the-top evil things and kind of be thankful that history is fun and controversial, because if it wasn't, there wouldn't be anything like worth studying. Really, it would not be as I'd be studying Connecticut carpet weavers or something like that. Something rather uncontroversial like that. But when you have this stuff, it makes history so much more worth it. That's why I almost catch myself cheering for the bad guys a lot of the time, and it's so bad because they're real people and they did actual bad things. Like, this isn't as bad as like cheering Andrew Jackson, who I'm typically not cheering unless he's like shooting another politician in a duel. But that's just something I kind of have to acknowledge. Like, sometimes I catch myself cheering the bad guys in these stories.
Stealing all the whiskey from himself, he could then sell it for big bucks. The perfect crime. Unfortunately, Remus was eventually caught by a goody-two-shoes prohibition director in Indiana who wouldn't take Remus's bribes, and the government found Remus guilty of violating the Volstead Act 3,000 times. For 2 years, as Remus sat in prison, his wife promised to take care of all of his money. And by take care of his money, she meant have an affair with a prohibition agent, sell off everything Remus owned, and file for divorce. When Remus finally got out and found his big fancy mansion empty with his wife gone, he reportedly broke down in tears. A few months later, during their divorce trial, he spotted his wife in a car in Cincinnati. Remus hopped in a cab and asked the driver to run her off the road. The driver was like, okay. Then Remus got out of the cab and shot his wife dead.
Oh God, no. I don't approve of that. There are certain points where like the cartoon violence and like ridiculous scheming like has gone too far. I can't cheer for the bad guy in that situation. So if that gives you any idea where I draw the line, shooting your wife in the face probably is there.
Into the police.
That's the line.
And his next trial, this time for murder, became a national sensation. Remus defended himself, claiming insanity, occasionally carrying out skillful questioning, occasionally crying in the corner. But the nation felt bad for him. His wife had screwed him over, and so when after just 19 minutes of deliberation, the jury returned and declared him not guilty, the court erupted into celebration.
Oh.
And just to remind you, this guy bluntly admitted to murdering his wife. The American justice system. Mwah. As
That's
alcohol
amazing.
poured into the nation, a lot of it was going to a new type of drinking establishment that had been booming in popularity, a secret drinking establishment. So secret that from the outside they often looked like ordinary shops or homes. So secret that you usually needed a password to get in. So secret that everybody knew about them.
Oh, jeez.
Speakeasies. And once you were in,
Oh,
the
yeah,
party went all night
speakeasies.
long. Scantily clad flappers, snake ladies, jazz. It was a roaring time to be alive. Some publications even posted reviews of these.
One thing that I have studied a little bit during this time, I have studied a little bit of early jazz history, and that is kind of entwined with the history of Prohibition a little bit. And they are definitely going to thrive during this time, jazz musicians. Weirdly enough, they're just coming up, and they're not fully considered acceptable yet. This is still like rebellious music, but it's a very crucial time. And I just finished writing a paper about the rise of jazz in the Soviet Union, a subject I never thought I would end up writing about.
Legal clubs and bribes galore kept the party going. It seemed like half the police officers and federal agents in cities like New York were receiving kickbacks from speakeasy owners. Hey, what the Kevin Costner is going on here? Officer O'Hannity, taking bribes? Why am I not surprised? Prohibition Director Simmons? For shame. Mom? What would Dad say? Ask him yourself. Dad would say, quit being such a wet blanket and let Daddy earn his tips. Anytime a speakeasy was shut down by authorities, it seemed like 3 more would just pop up elsewhere. And some neighborhoods were so full of them that one resident began hanging a sign to try to keep partygoers from constantly knocking on her door. It
That's
really
funny.
seemed like the new laws regarding alcohol, in some places, were simply being ignored. And one prohibition agent who traveled the country liked to see which city was the most defiant by timing how long it took for him to be offered a beer after he arrived. His winner? New Orleans, where a cab driver offered him a drink after just 35 seconds. Bravo! Many voices in Congress were already speaking out against
New Orleans, pretty much the jazz capital, so that's not at all surprising when all this emerging popular culture that's really starting to come out in the 20th century. Because like before this, we didn't really have what we know today as pop culture. It was just a totally different form that people found their entertainment. Now that this stuff is all so intertwined in the new century, it's not surprising that New Orleans is the place that he found the best results, and the fact that it is the jazz capital.
Prohibition and its failures. To display how ridiculous the whole thing was, one Republican congressman gathered the media to all come and watch him drink a homemade beer. When he asked a passing police officer if he'd like to arrest him, the officer said no. Hey, Wayne, is all this what you had in mind? I thought we were going to make the country better, but it almost seems like it's worse. What do you mean? Alcohol consumption is down. Well, that may be true in your small town world, but it says here drinking in some areas is up, as are arrests for public intoxication, drunk driving, and incidents of liver cirrhosis.
Well, some of those things like make sense, but like arrests going up would probably be a result of them enforcing the laws on that. I don't know if all of that applies. All of that necessarily indicates an uptick, but yeah, of course we have people over drinking because they're not doing it in like safe locations. That's definitely going to be a problem, I would imagine. If you're able to drink out in the open, I'd imagine there are certain social pressures that are not necessarily there in an underground setting.
General chaos has turned America into a nation of criminals with no respect for the law, and all these attempts at enforcement are just costing the economy valuable money and eating up judicial time and resources. Release the line. The social change and corruption that Wheeler and the Anti-Saloon League had been so eager to prevent, in the cities at least, was surging. See, when something's legal, you can usually regulate and control it, but make that thing illegal, and often anything, becomes fair game. Legal drinking age, gone. Mandatory closing hours for clubs and bars, gone. Other unspoken sociocultural rules surrounding alcohol, gone, gone, gone. In speakeasies, different genders and ethnicities were beginning to mingle in a way they hadn't done before. The Roaring Twenties saw a monumental shift in culture, not least of all because now men and women could flirt in public without being damned for eternity. An outraged Wayne Wheeler did his best to make sure that anyone breaking the law was punished. He had even stricter legislation put in place in New York. But all this did was clog up the justice system with petty drinking violations, and judges began letting everyone off with light fines, so the judges could get back to dealing with things that actually mattered. You know, things like murder. And there was plenty of murder. Because bootleggers and moonshiners were one thing, but Prohibition had given another kind of criminal an opportunity to
Gangsters.
make a fortune. Mobsters.
Yay!
Gangsters. Hey, Fat Tony. Big news. Hey, Fat Joey. What's up? I just got word from Fat Louie here that the government's outlawing alcohol. You know what that means. That means we're gonna be rich. Quick, call Fat Polly and let's go hijack a liquor truck now. All right.
One thing I'm most curious about is the reaction of the gangs and everybody who's really tied up in this to the end of Prohibition. That is something I'm far more interested in, and something that I've heard even less about than what's going on during Prohibition. I would really love to know a little bit more about that transition from Prohibition to the end of Prohibition, where all these people have kind of the rug pulled out from under them.
Hang on, let me tell my wife first. Hey, Fat Susan! No pizza for Fat Joey tonight, capiche? Stop calling me Fat Susan! Come on! Rival gangs began to battle in America's cities, raiding each other's transports, assassinating rivals, and trying to take control of their city's illicit booze trade. Every city had its top dog. Detroit had the Purple Gang. New England had Charles King Solomon. But no city was as infamous for gang violence and murder as Chicago. The city had multiple gang factions, and at first, they agreed to stay in their own neighborhoods. But the thing about criminals is that they're criminals, and the agreements inevitably broke down. One day, the leader of the Italian Southside gang was walking along the street when this happened. And he was like, you know, I think I'm done with this, and left for New York, leaving his crime empire to his chief enforcer, none other than Al Capone.
Okay. I know a little bit about Al Capone, and I didn't understand exactly how he rose up in power. This is actually a really cool context here. Most of what I know about him is his attempt to like plea out of I guess like when he got caught and they wanted to get him on tax evasion. He was like, I'm gonna plea, and they're like, no, we're just gonna take you down for tax evasion. We're not accepting your plea. And I thought that was like the funniest thing. And that apparently he wasn't like the brightest bulb. He could have saved himself a lot of trouble by at least paying taxes on his front businesses, like the fake businesses he has to maintain his operation.
Having been knifed in the face in his younger years, Capone earned himself the name Scarface. Although interestingly, he hated that nickname and preferred to be called Snorky. Snorky.
I've heard that one.
Ruthless,
That's
like
funny.
Any other gang leader in America. But what set him apart from others,
such a cute
the reason
name,
he's become synonymous with 1920s gang warfare, is this. Most other gang leaders would try to keep a low profile because, you know, they're killing and murdering and stuff. But Capone lived for the fame and kept an extremely high public profile, frequently speaking with the media about his exploits and presenting himself as a gracious host, providing Chicago with good times. No need to thank me, fellas. I just provide the city with a valuable commodity while doing away with the competition. You mean you murder people? Whoa, who said anything about murder? I just, you know, force my rivals underground. When you do the thing with the hands, it seems like you're talking about murder. Whoa, look at you with the brains. No, I just help people retire from life. So murder. Whoa! Al Snorky Capone was somewhat of an enigma, brutal in how he dealt with enemies, but in front of the camera, he was all smiles. One day, he'd be...
A lot of gangster types have been pretty good at endearing themselves to the public. Sometimes you'll have people who are otherwise seem to be like the most dangerous people. They'll end up donating to public causes and stuff to really endear themselves to people, which I think is so strange, but like I get it. Like marketing is kind of everything. It's even for a gangster.
Ordering hit after hit. The next, he'd be signing autographs in Wrigley Field. One day, he'd be bludgeoning members of his own gang with a baseball bat for conspiring against him. The next, he'd be playing Santa at a nearby parochial school. And no murder could ever be traced back to him. Just like every other criminal, he stuffed the pockets of city officials with cold, hard cash. And any who did try to oppose him sometimes found themselves being thrown down the steps of City Hall in broad daylight. Problem solved. The public couldn't get enough of Capone. He quickly became a household name as people romanticized the gang life he lived. And this became a source of concern for the people at the very top. President Hoover? What is it now, Miles?
Ooh, we got a lot of new
It's
models
just that
in
there's
this
a lot
one.
of crime, sir. Crime? How long's that been happening? Well, since the dawn of man, sir. What? Would you like me to blame it on the Democrats again? No, Miles. I want you to blame it on squirrels. Yes, the Democrats. Now stop wasting my time. Since having a crime lord controlling public officials and winning the hearts of the people probably wasn't a good thing, Hoover personally ordered that something be done about this Capone fellow. But before he knew it, President Hoover was also dealing with another major problem. You know him. You love him. Woman. The Prohibition era had been going on for nearly a decade, and anyone with a brain could see that it really wasn't going very well. One person with a brain was Pauline Sabin, an extremely influential and rich woman who served on the Republican National Committee, fundraised for Republican presidents, and had a secret wine room in her giant mansion. She initially supported Prohibition, but was now disgusted at the chaos it had created, and she began a new women's movement, this time not for Prohibition, but against it. Being the extremely influential woman she was, her new organization gained nearly 1.5 million members within 2 years, 5 times that of the Women's Christian Temperance Union. She hated that the WCTU claimed this.
It sometimes in this case, and I hate this. This is something I really don't like admitting, but you know, having money, money is political capital. That's the thing. I want it to be a situation where, oh, it's just the enthusiasm of the people, maybe behind a charismatic leader who really communicates their. No, sometimes money is very important, and that's why somebody like her would make such a great leader of a faction like this. And that makes me so mad because I really want it to be something more organic. It's just a reality that I don't like accepting.
Speak for all women, and she began calling for the repeal of the 18th Amendment. President Hoover, I helped fund your campaign, and now I want you to end Prohibition. Miles, what is it I say when I'm not going to do anything? You'll look into it, sir. Oh, yeah, that's right. Pauline? I'll look into it. Sabin gave speeches on the steps of Congress and helped start a growing push among the American people against Prohibition. But Hoover, a prohibitionist himself, wasn't budging. Then, on the 14th of February, 1929, something happened that shocked the nation. Men, thought to be working for Al Capone, tricked some Irish mobsters into meeting them at a garage in Chicago, thinking they were there to purchase hijacked whiskey. Instead, the mobsters were lined up against the wall by men dressed as police, and they were shot.
Oh, dressed as police.
The Valentine's Day Massacre had people outraged. It was cruel.
That's like the 100th St. Valentine's Day Massacre. There's aren't there like a ton of massacres with that name? Like, that's kind of interesting. Hold on, let me look that up. Okay, I just Googled it, and there's like 9 St. Valentine's Day massacres. I just had to check that. That's funny in itself. This is not funny, though. This is too much. And obviously, the more he goes over the top, if he's not too ambitious, he can probably float under people's radars. But this is too much. It's too much. This is definitely going to turn out bad for the guy.
And almost felt like American mobsters had finally crossed a line. People were sick of the violence, and in part, they blamed Prohibition for helping to create it. The pressure on Hoover to do something was steadily increasing. Fine. Miles, I want you to put a report together to see if this whole thing is working. You mean the thing where mobsters are becoming increasingly powerful and massacring each other in the streets and everyone is disregarding the law and half our public officials are corrupt and taking bribes? That thing? Yeah, I want to know if it's working or not, Miles. Stop wasting my time. Hoover continued to drag his feet on Prohibition, but after the Valentine's Day Massacre, he was still determined to do one thing. He wanted Al Capone in prison. Since Capone had been so careful, the FBI were having a hard time charging him with anything, but eventually, they got him. Capone, we know you're supplying Chicago with alcohol and you've been involved in countless murders. Whoa, look at you with the crazy talk. I ain't done none of that stuff. But you're rich, right? You're damn right I am. And so where'd all the money come from, Capone? All right, I'll let you in on a little secret, but you gotta promise not to tell anyone, okay? I don't pay my taxes.
Oh, jeez.
Whoa! Roll of his...
Yeah, so I heard it was like he admitted that when he was thinking, okay, they've got me. I'm just going to basically plea out, and I'll plead guilty to tax evasion. And then they just don't accept his plea after he's said it. And that's basically a confession. And yeah, and he's been taken down. And that's how he gets the reputation for being kind of dumb, because honestly, this was all kind of avoidable. He could have paid a little bit into the government, had some money slip under the radar a little bit, and he could have gone on for a while, or at least up until the end of Prohibition, and he'd probably continue in some capacity after Prohibition it goes away. But I don't know what business he would have to get into. But it's not like that is guaranteed to be the end of his career.
Murdering. The IRS finally got Capone on tax evasion. At his trial, he didn't seem too concerned though, and spent most of his time having a laugh with his lawyers. Hey Capone, I gotta know, why are you so confident you're gonna win here? Well, Your Honor, because I'm an honest man with a big heart who's passionate about working for the good of the people. And also because I threatened the entire jury's families. Luckily, at the last minute, the judge replaced the entire jury pool with a new one that Capone's men hadn't yet got to, and Capone was found guilty. He was sentenced to 11 years in federal prison, the harshest penalty ever given to a tax evader. But even with Capone locked away, the violence in Chicago and other cities continued, and in response, the movement against Prohibition continued to grow. And the final nail in Prohibition's coffin came in 1929. After a decade of booming economic growth under 3 Republican presidents, the stock market plummeted, and America was thrown into the grips of the Great Depression. It was an awful time. 1 out of every 5 workers, 15 million people, would lose their jobs. Half the nation's banks failed. Temporary shantytowns were built for the broken homeless in public parks. Suddenly, very few people had time to care about Prohibition. Expensive enforcement of an unenforceable law didn't seem like that big of a priority when people were having their homes repossessed and losing their life savings. And many began to argue that repealing Prohibition would create vital jobs and tax revenue for the government.
Hell yeah, it would. Okay, so that's pretty much how it happens. Okay, I knew had something to do with that. I just wanted to make sure it was as simple as I thought it was. Great Depression, need tax revenue, and there is the element of jobs that is very important. Okay, got it.
Yet President Hoover doubled down.
What a jerk.
Gimme. Prohibition.
It's not going to work out very well for him,
great.
is it?
Fantastic news.
I know he's not going to last much longer, obviously.
Undermining the rule of law in America. Miles, it says the word great. That means good. Now stop wasting my time! The public, increasingly shocked at the violence they saw in the streets, the corruption they saw in the government, the general disregard for the law, and now an economic calamity, had enough. For his re-election, Hoover faced a Democratic candidate who promised to finally do something about Prohibition. Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Oh, here we go.
Crowds cheered as FDR made his campaign speeches promising to modify the Volstead Act, and Pauline Sabin, a lifelong Republican, along with her 1.5 million supporters, endorsed Roosevelt.
I think he had a previous model of FDR, and it seems like this one's like an updated version, which I think this one's really good. No, he didn't. Because I think in the... I don't know. I think I saw... No, in the Cold War one, it was Truman. FDR wasn't even there. Okay, never mind.
And on Election Day, it was a landslide. Before FDR had even taken office, Republicans in Congress began the process of passing the 21st Amendment to repeal Prohibition. One of FDR's first acts as president was to pass the Beer Permit Act, which made beer legal while the new amendment was being ratified. In 1933, with the passage of the 21st Amendment, Prohibition was finally over. And the people celebrated like they'd just won a world war. Bars and taverns were packed. The WCTU were inconsolable. Wayne Wheeler was dead. And the celebration, particularly in America's cities, was intense. Heading into the mid-1930s, the effects of Prohibition were clear to see. From now on, culture around drinking had changed, with men and women drinking together, not in saloons, but in bars and taverns. The crime syndicates that had been given so much power through Prohibition remained powerful as they moved on to other things. Some states opted to remain dry, with Oklahoma only repealing its Prohibition laws in 1959. To this day, there are still counties in America with some form of Prohibition. So what did we learn today, kids? What's the big lesson here? What's the moral of this story that we can all take away and apply to our day-to-day lives? Maybe that you shouldn't force your own morals on others who don't share them? Maybe that if you tell Americans not to do something, that's the one thing they'll definitely do. Or maybe there is no lesson. Maybe we're all just a bunch of dumb, stinky idiots, and we're all doomed. The end.
Yay! That was pretty dope. That was pretty dope. I hope Oversimplified does more stuff like this, where he follows movements, and maybe even some more individuals. I like the war stuff, although I'm not much of a military guy. It's never been the side of history that's most appealed to me. Though it is very good to have videos like this to explain things in a way that I can kind of understand, because my military IQ rather low. But yeah, this one was really good. I hope I contributed something to this video. I felt myself kind of getting lost in it a little bit more than I usually do, and I really enjoyed it. I like the temperance movement stuff at the beginning. I like the emphasis on the role of women. I thought that was really cool. I got to learn a little bit more about figures that I'm slightly aware of. As far as Al Capone goes, he's going to eventually get out of jail, but he's never really going to be the same. He has like syphilis or something, and if you don't treat syphilis, then it goes to your brain, and you end up, yeah, you end up kind of losing it a little bit, and that seems to be what has happened with Al Capone. The story is that he becomes a syphilitic moron, and he goes fishing in his swimming pool. I don't know how true that story is, but that's the one that's been thrown around willy-nilly, and I am inclined to believe it because it's funny. Overall, this one was a really fun video. I think it was really cool. I am excited to see where he goes next with this. I cannot even imagine where he's going to go with it. There's no event in particular that seems like it's the most natural thing to do next. I mean, I was thinking of like themed stuff based on the times. I was thinking like, oh, is he gonna do like previous pandemics or something? But that might not be in very good taste, and he doesn't seem like he's going for that sort of thing. He seems to do what he feels like doing, which I like. This was cool. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want me to check out more of his stuff, I totally will. I'll definitely get around to checking out more of his stuff. You don't need to ask me to. I still have plenty of stuff to get around to. So if there are any other videos you want me to react to, leave them in the comment section below. Man, I can't talk. It's been too long. I should wrap this. Like, comment, subscribe. I will see you guys tomorrow with another video. This has been cool. I'm still getting used to this new space. Hopefully everything sounds and looks okay. I'm not really sure. The light's a little weird. I'll try to fix that in post. But otherwise, I think I've got a good setup for the near future. If you've watched my recent, my couple videos ago and a video before that, I've had some moving around to do, but I have a desk now. I have a decent setup, and hopefully I'm going to be able to do plenty of recording before New Year. And I want to get a lot done. I'm so excited. Now that the semester's coming to an end, I really want to double down on videos and be very productive. So I'm enjoying this stuff. I hope Oversimplified enjoys the ad revenue, because these things always get claimed, so they're just for fun at this point. So yeah, I will see you guys next time. Later.